an original narrative, created especially for Shadows of Love. Adrian Marchesi stared at the bruises on Mara's arm, purple fingerprints against pale skin, and something in his carefully composed world fractured. "Who did this to you?" he whispered. His voice so controlled it barely disturbed the air between them, yet she felt the tremor beneath it, like the first warning of an earthquake. 8 months she'd been invisible in his mansion, cleaning silently around the edges of his power, and now his dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. She knew what his protection would mean. Safety wrapped in golden chains, freedom traded for walls. What terrified her wasn't the danger outside. It was how desperately she wanted to say yes to the quiet question in his gaze, and how completely it would change everything if she did. For 8 months, Mara Quinn had perfected the art of invisibility in the Marchesi mansion. She moved through its marble halls like a ghost, dusting crystal surfaces and polishing hardwood floors, while the Empire's machinery hummed around her. The mansion staff knew the rules. Be efficient, be silent, be invisible, especially when Adrian Marchesi was home. She'd seen him, of course. The man whose name made hardened criminals lower their voices. He moved with the quiet precision of someone who never needed to raise his voice to be heard. Dark suits, perfect posture, eyes that missed nothing. Sometimes she caught him watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. Manhattan spread before him like a chessboard. Mara's routine was clockwork. Up at 5, uniform donned, charcoal gray, understated. Breakfast in the staff kitchen, then 6 hours of methodical cleaning. She took her lunch alone, usually with a book. Then 4 more hours before returning to her small room in the East Wing. What no one knew was why she stayed. Not for the modest salary, though she saved every penny. Not for the accommodations, though they were better than what she'd escaped. Because the Marchesi mansion was the last place her ex would look for her. The last place debt collectors would come knocking. Here, she was safe because she was unseen. "You're always reading," Mrs. Vega, the housekeeper, had remarked once. Philosophy? Mara had nodded, closing Seneca's letters. Just trying to understand power. Mrs. Vega had given her a strange look. In this house, power is understanding when to look away. Mara learned Adrian's patterns. Monday meetings in his study with men who never smiled. Tuesday mornings at his downtown office. Wednesday evenings alone in the library with a single glass of whiskey. He never acknowledged the staff directly, but she noticed he never left dishes for someone else to clean. His towels were always hung precisely. His spaces remained ordered, controlled. Once, she'd entered the library to dust while he was reading. She'd frozen in the doorway, apology ready. He'd looked up, dark eyes registering her presence. Then, without a word, he'd returned to his book, permission granted. She'd worked silently around him, aware of his presence like a gravitational field. That night, Mrs. Vega had pulled her aside. "Mr. Marchesi doesn't allow staff in his spaces when he's present. He didn't ask me to leave." "No," Mrs. Vega had said, looking troubled. "He didn't." Mara had survived by being careful, by watching, by staying invisible, until yesterday, when invisibility had failed her completely. The alley smelled of garbage and rain. Mara had taken the shortcut after picking up dry cleaning, Mr. Marchesi's suits, to be delivered before his dinner meeting. She was 3 blocks from the mansion when hands grabbed her from behind. "Look what we found." A voice growled as she was shoved against brick. 2 men, faces hidden by shadows. One held her arms, while the other tore at her bag. Nothing worth. The second man stopped, noticing her uniform. "Wait, this the Marchesi house uniform." A pause, then laughter. "Even better. Turn around, sweetheart." She fought, landing one solid kick before a fist connected with her jaw. Pain exploded across her face. Through ringing ears she heard, "Tell your boss Kreshnik sends his regards." This is what happens when boundaries get blurry. The last thing she remembered was her head hitting the pavement. She woke to antiseptic smells and soft beeping. Not a hospital. The room was too elegant. Cream walls, medical equipment, and a window overlooking Central Park. The Marchesi mansion's private medical suite. She'd cleaned it weekly, but never imagined being a patient. Pain throbbed through her body. Her ribs ached with each breath. Her face felt swollen and tight. The door opened, and Adrian Marchesi entered, Gone was the distant businessman. This man radiated controlled fury. He moved to her bedside, eyes cataloging her injuries. The doctor says you have 3 bruised ribs, a mild concussion, and extensive facial bruising, he said, voice deceptively calm. You were found 2 blocks from here. My security brought you back immediately. Mara tried to sit up, wincing. The dry cleaning is the least of my concerns. He stepped closer, and she saw something dangerous flash in his eyes. Your name is Mara Quinn. You've worked here for 8 months. You take the same route to the cleaners every Tuesday. She hadn't realized he knew her name. His gaze fixed on her arm where her sleeve had risen. 5 distinct bruises, fingerprints. His jaw tightened. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a whisper that made her shiver. Who did this to you? 4 words, simple question. But in them, Mara heard the sound of lines being drawn, of something irrevocable shifting. She saw the calculation in his eyes, not just anger, but something personal. They said. She swallowed, throat dry. They said to tell you Kreshnik sends his regards. That this is what happens when boundaries get blurry. Something cold and terrible settled over Adrian's features. He reached for his phone, never taking his eyes from her bruises. Dominic, he said quietly. I need every camera feed within 10 blocks of the mansion, last 3 hours, and call a meeting, now. He ended the call, then did something that shocked her. He pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down. You're safe now, he said. No one will touch you again. Mara felt the weight of his words, protection and threat intertwined. Why? She managed. His eyes met hers. Because they used you to send me a message, and I'm about to send one back. By morning, the city had changed. Mara felt it even from her bed in the medical suite. Staff whispered in hallways. Security doubled. Men in suits arrived and departed with urgent purpose. Mrs. Vega brought breakfast, eyes wide with concern. How are you feeling, dear? Like I've been hit by a truck, Mara admitted. What's happening out there? The housekeeper hesitated. Mr. Marchesi has made arrangements for your safety. What kind of arrangements? Mrs. Vega busied herself adjusting pillows, the kind that involve every security camera in a 10-mile radius being watched. The kind where men who normally negotiate million-dollar deals are reviewing footage frame by frame. Mara's stomach tightened. Because of me? No, Mrs. Vega said firmly. Because someone crossed a line. In this world, lines matter. Later that morning, Adrian returned. He looked as immaculate as ever, but shadows beneath his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. We've identified them, he said without preamble. 2 enforcers from the Kreshnik organization. They've been dealt with. Mara's throat went dry. What does that mean? It means they're no longer a threat to you. His tone left no room for further questions on that subject. More importantly, as of this morning, everyone in this city knows you're under my protection. The implications hit her like a second assault. No more invisibility. No more safety and anonymity. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. You didn't have to. He approached the bed, stopping at a respectful distance. They chose you because you work in my house. That makes it my responsibility. And if I don't want your protection? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps. People didn't often refuse Adrian Marchesi. What would you prefer? He asked, and the genuine question in his voice startled her. Mara considered. She couldn't return to invisibility. Couldn't pretend this hadn't happened. But she wouldn't trade one cage for another. I want to keep my job, she said finally. I want to move freely. I don't want guards following me everywhere. Adrian studied her, head slightly tilted. You were attacked delivering my dry cleaning. The least I can do is ensure your safety. Then let's negotiate, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Protection without confinement. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're negotiating terms with me. Yes, she met his gaze steadily. Because I won't trade freedom for safety. He considered this, then nodded once. Very well. I propose surveillance without interference. Security will monitor, not escort. You maintain your routine with additional precautions. And my privacy, respected within reason. Your room and personal spaces remain yours alone. He paused. But I need one concession, which is direct contact. If there's any threat, any concern, you call me personally. He placed a sleek phone on her bedside table. private number is programmed in. Mara stared at the phone. This wasn't just protection. It was connection. A direct line to one of the most powerful men in Manhattan. Why go to these lengths? She asked. I'm just staff. Adrian's expression darkened. Because they used you to send a message. Because they thought you were disposable. He stepped closer, voice dropping. And because in my house, no one is disposable. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. This wasn't just business. This was personal, in a way she couldn't quite understand. We have an agreement then, he asked. Mara nodded slowly. We do. As he turned to leave, she called after him. Mr. Marchesi. He paused at the door. Thank you, she said quietly. Something unreadable crossed his face. Don't thank me yet, Miss Quinn. This protection comes with a price. Just not one you'll have to pay. The door closed behind him, leaving Mara with the unsettling certainty that everything had changed. She was no longer invisible. She was marked not just by bruises, but by Adrian Marchesi's attention. And that, she suspected, might be the most dangerous mark of all. 2 weeks after the attack, Mara's bruises had faded to yellowing shadows. She'd resumed her duties. Though Mrs. Vega insisted on a lighter schedule, the mansion felt different now. Security more visible, staff more attentive, and Adrian Marchesi was suddenly aware of her existence. She felt his attention like heat on her skin. Nothing inappropriate, nothing direct, just awareness. He nodded when they passed in hallways, asked about her recovery in brief, polite exchanges, left books on her cleaning cart, philosophy, history, with no note or explanation. Tonight, she'd entered the library at her usual time, expecting it to be empty. Instead, Adrian sat in his leather chair, reading glasses perched on his nose. Documents spread before him. I'm sorry, she said, backing toward the door. I can come back later. No need. He gestured to the shelves. Please continue. Mara hesitated, then moved to the far bookcase, aware of his presence like an electrical charge in the room. She worked methodically, dusting shelves, straightening volumes, hyper-conscious of every movement. Seneca, he said suddenly. She turned. Pardon. You were reading Seneca. Before. He set down his papers. On the nature of mercy. Mara blinked, surprised he'd noticed. Yes. I find his thoughts on power interesting. The one truly noble quality of ruling is that it enables mercy, he quoted, watching her. The wise man will not pity but will help. She countered softly. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. An important distinction. She returned to her dusting, aware of his eyes following her movements. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken questions. When she reached for a high shelf, pain shot through her ribs. She couldn't suppress a small gasp. Adrian was beside her instantly, concern etching his features. Your ribs. She nodded, breathing carefully. Still healing. He stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, subtle, expensive. His eyes traveled to her wrist where her sleeve had risen, revealing the last fading bruises. May I? He asked quietly. The question hung between them. 2 simple words, yet loaded with meaning. He was asking permission, something men with power rarely did. Yes, she whispered. His fingers brushed her wrist, turning it gently to examine the marks. His touch was clinical, respectful. But Mara felt her pulse jump beneath his fingertips. The surveillance cameras captured everything, he said, voice low. We have faces, names, connections, evidence that could end this cleanly. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Is that what you want? A clean end. What I want, he said carefully, is to ensure this never happens again, to anyone under my roof. His thumb traced the edge of a bruise, so lightly she barely felt it. When she drew a sharp breath, he immediately released her. I've arranged security you won't notice, he continued, stepping back to a proper distance. Cameras adjusted to cover your usual routes. Men who will watch without approaching. Protection without confinement, as promised. Thanks, she said, meaning it. He nodded once, returning to his desk. As she resumed her work, he spoke again without looking up. The Seneca. It's yours to keep. I've ordered the complete letters. Mara smiled slightly. More philosophy on power. When he finally looked up, something in his eyes made her breath catch. On mercy, he corrected softly, and its proper application. The private room at Luciano's was lit only by candles, casting long shadows across white tablecloths. Adrian sat with perfect posture, watching the door. Dominic, his security chief, stood silently in the corner. "Sir," Dominic murmured. "They're here." Adrian nodded once, adjusting his cufflinks. "Remember, no weapons visible. This is a conversation, not a confrontation." The door opened, admitting 3 men. At their center walked Arben Kreshnik, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, his smile never reaching his eyes. The rival boss took his seat across from Adrian, his guards flanking him. "Adrian," Kreshnik greeted, his accent still carrying traces of Albania, an unexpected invitation. "I trust the wine will be excellent, always." Adrian poured 2 glasses of Barolo, sliding one across the table. "Though I doubt we'll finish it." Kreshnik's smile tightened. "So this isn't a social call. You know why I'm here. Enlighten me." Adrian set down his glass untouched. "2 of your men attacked a woman, my employee. Left her with bruises and a message for me." Kreshnik raised an eyebrow. "And you believe I ordered this?" "I believe nothing without evidence," Adrian replied coldly. "Which is why we're having this conversation before I take action." The older man leaned back, studying Adrian's face. "You've called a sit-down over a housekeeper. This isn't like you, Adrian. Your father understood business is business." "My father is dead," Adrian said flatly. "And this isn't about business. This is about boundaries." He placed a manila folder on the table, opening it to reveal surveillance photos. The attack in clinical black and white, Mara's bruised face, the 2 men responsible. "Your men crossed a line," Adrian continued. "They touched someone under my protection. They used her to send a message. So I'm here to deliver one in return." Kreshnik examined the photos, his expression unreadable. "These men work for me, yes. But this," he tapped the images. "This was not my order. Then whose? That's what concerns me." Kreshnik leaned forward. "Someone wants conflict between us. Someone who knows which buttons to push." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting a third party, or someone inside our organizations." Kreshnik sipped his wine. "Tell me, does this woman mean something to you, beyond employment?" The question carried weight in their world. Personal attachments were vulnerabilities, weapons to be exploited. "She is under my protection," Adrian stated carefully. "That's all that matters." "Is it?" Kreshnik smiled thinly. "Because my sources tell me you've activated every camera in the city to watch her movements. That you've assigned shadow security to follow her routes. That you personally oversaw her medical care." Adrian kept his expression neutral. "Your sources are well informed. They also tell me she's quite beautiful, intelligent, that you've taken a personal interest." The implication hung in the candlelit air between them. Adrian maintained eye contact, refusing to confirm or deny. "Let me be clear," he said instead, voice dropping to a dangerous softness. "The map is being redrawn tonight. Her safety is non-negotiable. Touch her again, or allow your men to do so, and there will be no more conversations. No diplomacy, no mercy." Kreshnik studied him for a long moment. "You've changed, Adrian. Your father kept business and pleasure separate." "This isn't pleasure," Adrian replied coldly. "This is justice." "Is it?" Kreshnik set down his glass. "Or is it something more dangerous? Something that might cloud your judgment?" Adrian stood, buttoning his jacket. "Find out who's pushing for conflict between us. I'll do the same. But understand this, she remains untouched. That's the new boundary." As Kreshnik rose, he offered a final warning. "Be careful, Adrian. Caring for someone in our world is a liability, and if I've noticed, others will too." He paused at the door. "Watch your inner circle. Betrayal often comes from those closest to us." After they departed, Dominic approached. "Sir, do you believe him?" Adrian stared at the candle flame. "I believe someone wants war. And they're willing to use her to get it. The evidence points to Kreshnik's crew, perhaps too conveniently." Adrian's eyes hardened. "Review everything again. And Dominic, limit knowledge of our security arrangements for Miss Quinn. From now on, only you and I know the full details. You think the leak is internal?" Adrian extinguished the candle with his fingertips. "I think someone knows exactly how to provoke me, and that's information very few people have." The security hub hummed with technology. Wall-mounted screens, displaying camera feeds from across the city. Mara stood beside Adrian, watching footage of her own attack play in high definition. Her stomach clenched at the sight. "Why am I here?" she asked quietly. Adrian's expression was grim. "Because something doesn't add up, and you have the right to know." He pointed to a timestamp. "These men waited exactly 17 minutes at this location, as if they knew your route and schedule precisely." "My schedule changed that day," Mara realized. "I went earlier than usual." "Exactly." Adrian's eyes narrowed. Yet they were perfectly positioned. How? The implication settled between them like a weight. Someone with inside knowledge had coordinated the attack. Dominic entered, carrying a flash drive. "Sir, we've compiled all the footage as requested." "Show us," Adrian ordered. The screens filled with multiple angles of the same incident. Street cameras, store security feeds, traffic monitors. A complete record of the assault from every possible perspective. "Focus on the reflection in the deli window," Adrian instructed. "Enhance." The image sharpened, revealing a third figure watching from across the street, a familiar silhouette. "Carlo," Dominic breathed. "Your driver." Adrian's jaw tightened. He called in sick that day. Said he had family emergency. "He's been with you for 3 years, Dominic said, disbelief evident. "And he sold my routines to the highest bidder." Adrian turned to Mara. "Not just mine, yours too." Mara felt cold realization wash over her. "He's the leak." "One of them." Adrian's voice was deadly calm. "The question is who he's working for." Dominic pulled up another file. "We found this on the secure server. Someone accessed Miss Quinn's personnel file last month, printed her schedule, address history, even her emergency contacts. On screen appeared records of the data breach, and the user ID responsible. Michael Vega," Mara read aloud. "Mrs. Vega's son, but he works in your downtown office." "In accounting," Adrian confirmed, "with access to sensitive information and connections to the Kreshnik organization through his gambling debts." The betrayal cut deep. Mrs. Vega had been kind to her from the beginning. "Does she know?" Mara asked. "No." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "And she won't, until we're certain of his involvement." Dominic inserted the flash drive, bringing up new footage. "This is what concerns me most, sir. The evidence we gathered initially, the footage that clearly identified Kreshnik's men, it's been altered." Side-by-side comparisons showed subtle differences. Timestamps adjusted by minutes. Faces slightly clearer in one version than the other. Details emphasized or obscured. "Someone wants us to blame Kreshnik," Adrian concluded. "To start a war." "But why?" Mara asked. "Territory, power, revenge." Adrian's eyes met hers. "Or simply chaos. Some men profit when order breaks down." A phone rang, Mara's. The special line Adrian had given her. She answered, putting it on speaker. "Mara," Mrs. Vega's voice trembled. "Someone's been in your room. Your things are scattered everywhere. I think a crash in the background. Someone's still here." Adrian was already moving. "Mrs. Vega, get out now. Go to the kitchen. Lock the door." "I can't," she whispered. "He's blocking the hallway." Mara's heart pounded. "I'm coming back." "No," Adrian cut in sharply. "That's exactly what they want." To Dominic, "Security team to the east wing, now." But Mara was already heading for the door. "She's in danger because of me." Adrian caught her arm. "This is a trap. They want you back in the open." Their eyes locked in silent battle. Then Adrian made a decision. "My car. Now, we go together." To Dominic, "Activate Protocol 7. No one enters or leaves the property without direct authorization." As they rushed toward the garage, Adrian's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "What is it?" Mara asked. He showed her the screen, a single image. Mara entering the security hub earlier that day. The message beneath. "She's compromised. Moving tonight. They're watching us," she whispered, "even here. And they've just shown their hand." Adrian's voice was ice. "Whoever sent this has access to our internal security feeds." The garage door opened to sheets of rain. As they approached Adrian's car, the security lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. "Back inside," Adrian ordered, pushing Mara toward the door. Too late. Headlights cut through the darkness as a vehicle screeched to a halt, blocking their path. Men emerged, faces obscured. "Run," Adrian whispered, pressing something cold and heavy into her hand. "A gun. Northeast exit, through the garden. Don't stop." "What about you?" His eyes held hers for one electric moment. "I'll find you. Now go." Mara slipped into the rain-soaked night, the weight of the gun unfamiliar in her hand. Betrayal and danger closing in from all sides. Rain lashed Mara's face as she ran through darkened streets, lungs burning. She'd escaped the mansion through the garden gate, exactly as Adrian had instructed. Behind her, she'd heard shouting, the crack of gunfire, then silence more terrifying than noise. She clutched the gun Adrian had given her, praying she wouldn't need to use it. 3 blocks from the mansion, headlights swept around a corner. She ducked into a doorway, heart hammering. The car slowed, then stopped. The passenger window lowered. "Get in." Adrian's voice, tense but controlled. Relief flooded her as she slid into the seat. He was alive, though blood darkened his sleeve. "You're hurt," she said. Superficial. His eyes never left the road as he accelerated. The mansion's compromised. Someone disabled the security systems from inside. Mrs. Vega. Safe. The call was a lure, but she was actually in danger. Michael brought men into the house. Mara's mind raced. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't expect. Adrian navigated through the storm. Windshield wipers fighting the deluge. "I have a property near the harbor. Off the books." Rain drummed on the roof as they drove in tense silence. Finally, Adrian spoke. "I should have seen this coming. Michael, Carlo, they've been positioning for months, feeding information to both sides, creating the perfect conditions for conflict. But why? Power vacuum." Adrian's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "If Kreshnik and I destroy each other, someone else steps in. Someone who's been carefully positioned." A vehicle appeared in the rearview mirror, gaining rapidly. "We're being followed," Adrian said flatly. He made a sharp turn, then another. The headlights stayed with them. "Hold on." He accelerated through a red light, swerving around sparse traffic. The pursuing vehicle matched their moves, closing the distance. Adrian's expression hardened. "We can't lead them to the safe house." He made another turn, this time heading toward the waterfront. "There's another way." The harbor loomed ahead. Industrial buildings silhouetted against the stormy sky. Adrian pulled into a shipping complex, driving between massive containers. "When I stop, run for that building." He nodded toward a warehouse with roof access. "Up the stairs to the roof. I'll be right behind you." The car skidded to a halt. Mara flung herself into the rain, sprinting across slick pavement. Behind her, car doors slammed. Shouts carried through the storm. The warehouse door yielded to her push. Inside, steel stairs spiraled upward. She climbed, legs burning, the gun heavy in her pocket. Rain hammered the metal roof above. She burst onto the rooftop as lightning split the sky. Wind whipped her hair as she searched for cover. The roof was largely empty. Some ventilation equipment, a water tank, little else. Footsteps on the stairs. She raised the gun with trembling hands. Adrian emerged, soaked but focused. "It's clear below, for now." Relief washed through her. He crossed to her side, gently lowering the gun. "You're safe." "For how long?" Rain streamed down her face. "They found us once. They'll find us again." Adrian's eyes held hers. "Not if we end this tonight." Thunder rolled across the harbor. Through the downpour, Mara could make out the lights of Manhattan, the city that had become her refuge and her prison. "How?" she asked, with the truth. Adrian withdrew his phone, protected in a waterproof case. The original, unaltered footage. Evidence of who really orchestrated the attack. Who's been manipulating both sides. "You knew." "I suspected. Now I'm certain." His expression was grim. "Robert Kane, my father's former consigliere. The man who taught me everything about this business." The name hit Mara like a physical blow. The older man who visits on Sundays, with the silver cane. The same. Bitterness edged Adrian's voice. "He's been patient. Positioning Michael and Carlo. Feeding information to Kreshnik. Creating the perfect opportunity. And I was the trigger," Mara realized. "Attacking me would force your hand." They miscalculated. Rain streamed down Adrian's face, making him look almost vulnerable. "They thought I'd retaliate immediately. Start a war. Why didn't you?" His eyes met hers. "Because you asked for justice, not vengeance." The door to the roof crashed open. 3 men emerged, guns raised. At their center stood Michael Vega, his face twisted with triumph. "Touching scene," he called over the storm. "The boss and his housekeeper. If I'd known she was your weakness, I'd have used her months ago. Adrian stepped in front of Mara. It's over, Michael. We have the evidence, the original footage. Your conversations with Kane, everything. Michael laughed. Evidence? For what, a trial? That's not how our world works, Marchesi. You know that. Things change, Adrian replied calmly. Not fast enough. Michael gestured to his men. Kane sends his regards. Says it's time for new management. Lightning flashed, illuminating the rooftop in stark white. In that frozen moment, Mara saw Adrian's hand move to his jacket. Wait, she said, stepping forward. I have something you want. Michael's eyes narrowed. And what's that? The flash drive. She reached slowly into her pocket, with all the evidence. Adrian gave it to me for safekeeping. Adrian's gaze snapped to her, confusion evident. She gave him the slightest nod. Trust me. Hand it over, Michael demanded. First, tell me why, she countered, rain plastering her hair to her face. Why target me specifically? Michael's smile was cold. Because he watches you. When you clean the library, when you read in the garden. The great Adrian Marchesi, distracted by a housekeeper, Kane noticed. Said you were the perfect pressure point. And the attack. Just business, nothing personal. Michael shrugged. Though I'll admit, it was satisfying watching him tear the city apart, looking for who hurt you. Adrian's expression remained controlled. But Mara saw the fury in his eyes. The drive, Michael insisted, hand extended. Slowly, Mara withdrew not a flash drive, but the gun, before she could raise it. Gunfire erupted from behind them. Dominic emerged from the shadows, weapon raised. Drop it now. Chaos erupted on the rain-slick roof. Michael's men scattered for cover. Adrian pulled Mara down behind a ventilation unit as bullets ricocheted off metal. Stay here, he ordered, eyes intense. No matter what happens, stay down. Before she could respond, he was moving, circling toward Michael's position. Dominic provided covering fire, forcing the attackers back, through sheets of rain. Mara watched Adrian confront Michael, not with violence, but with words she couldn't hear over the storm. Michael's face contorted with rage. He raised his gun. Time slowed. Mara saw Adrian's choice in his hesitation. He could shoot first and end it, or maintain the moral high ground he'd chosen. He lowered his weapon. Michael's finger tightened on the trigger. Dominic fired. Michael crumpled to the rooftop, weapon clattering away. In the sudden silence, broken only by rain, Adrian knelt beside his fallen enemy, not to finish him, but to press a hand against the wound, slowing the bleeding. Call an ambulance, he ordered Dominic, and the police. Mara emerged from cover, stunned. The police. Adrian's eyes met hers across the rain-swept roof. Like you said, justice, not vengeance. As sirens wailed in the distance, Adrian crossed to her side. Rain washed the blood from his hands, but couldn't erase the weight of his choice. It ends tonight, he said quietly, with truth, not more bloodshed. Mara looked at the man before her, powerful, dangerous, yet choosing a different path. What happens now? She asked. Lightning illuminated his face, revealing determination and something softer, more vulnerable. Now, he said, we redraw the map, together. The waiting room of the private hospital was eerily quiet. Mara sat with her hands folded, watching Adrian pace. Outside, rain still fell, gentler now as dawn approached. Michael will recover, Dominic reported, entering with coffee cups, under police guard. Adrian nodded once. And Kane? In custody. The evidence was compelling. Dominic glanced at Mara. The unaltered footage, financial records, phone logs, everything you compiled. Not everything, Adrian corrected. Only what's necessary for legal proceedings. The rest stays private. Mara accepted the coffee Dominic offered. What about Mrs. Vega? Devastated, Adrian replied softly, but uninvolved. She knew nothing of her son's activities. The weight of the night's events pressed down on them all. Lives altered, boundaries redrawn, a criminal empire suddenly exposed to legal scrutiny. The police will want your statement, Adrian said, finally sitting beside her. Both our statements. About the attack on the roof, about everything. His eyes held hers. The original assault, the evidence tampering, the conspiracy. Understanding dawned. You're making it official. Bringing it into the light, some of it. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Enough to ensure justice, without unnecessary exposure. The implications were enormous. Adrian Marchesi, willingly involving law enforcement, creating legal records, stepping partially out of the shadows. Why? She asked. He considered his answer carefully. Because some cycles need to be broken. Because power, without accountability, corrupts. His voice dropped. Because you deserved better than shadow justice. A doctor approached, interrupting them. Mr. Marchesi, a moment, please. As Adrian stepped away, Dominic took his place beside Mara. I've worked for him for 7 years, he said quietly. I've never seen him make this choice before. Which choice? Restraint, legal channels, public record. Dominic studied her. You changed something in him. Before she could respond, Adrian returned. Michael's asking for you, he told Dominic. Security clearance is arranged. After Dominic departed, silence settled between them. Adrian seemed suddenly exhausted. The perfect posture giving way to something more human. I need to ask you something, he said finally. What? Will you testify, officially on record, about the original attack, the evidence we found, everything you witnessed? The request hung in the air between them. In his world, silence was currency. Testimony was betrayal. Yet here he was, asking her to speak. You're dismantling your own protection, she realized. The code of silence that's kept your business safe. Parts of it, he acknowledged. The parts that can't survive in the light, and the rest will adapt, transform. His eyes held hers. Some things are worth preserving, others need to end. Mara considered what he was offering and what he was asking. A choice, agency, the power to decide how this story would be told. I'll testify, she said finally, but on one condition. Name it. Complete truth. No editing, no convenient omissions. If we do this, we do it right. Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. Agreed. Dawn light began filtering through the windows, painting the sterile room in soft gold. Outside, the city was waking, unaware of how its power structures had shifted overnight. What happens to you? She asked softly. When the dust settles. Adrian looked toward the rising sun. I rebuild. Differently this time. And us. The question escaped before she could reconsider. His gaze returned to her, intense and unguarded. That depends entirely on you. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then his phone rang. Dominic. Sir. His voice came through the speaker. Kane is talking, naming names. This is going wider than we anticipated. Adrian's expression hardened. Let it. It's time for clean books. After ending the call, he turned back to Mara. The gallery opening at the Riverside Foundation. Tomorrow night. What about it? It's public. Neutral ground. Media presence. His eyes held hers. The perfect place for truth to emerge. Understanding dawned. You want me to testify there, publicly? Make your statement to the authorities beforehand. But yes, be seen there. Show that neither of us is hiding. He paused. Unless you'd prefer to disappear. I can arrange that too. New identity, new location, complete separation. The offer surprised her. Freedom, if she wanted it. Distance from him, and everything he represented. Is that what you want? She asked quietly. What I want, he said carefully, is for you to choose, without pressure, without obligation. In that moment, Mara saw the truth. This powerful, dangerous man was giving her the one thing no one else had. Genuine choice. The gallery, she decided. I'll be there. Relief softened his features. I'll have a car sent. No. She smiled slightly. I'll make my own way. Meet you there. Adrian nodded, understanding what she needed. Not his protection, but her independence. As dawn broke fully over the city, they sat together in companionable silence, the weight of secrets lifting with the night. The Riverside Foundation gallery gleamed with light, its glass walls reflecting the harbor waters beyond. Inside, Manhattan's elite mingled among modern art installations, champagne flutes in hand. Journalists circulated, cameras flashing. Mara stood at the entrance, a vision far removed from the invisible housekeeper. Her simple black dress was elegant rather than flashy. Her only jewelry a delicate silver pendant. Her bruises had faded, but the confidence in her posture was new. She'd given her official statement that morning. Every detail, every name, every connection, laid out for the authorities with precise clarity. Now came the public acknowledgement. Heads turned as she entered. Whispers followed. The woman from the news. The the housekeeper, the center of the scandal, the one who brought down Robert Kane. Adrian stood across the gallery, deep in conversation with the police commissioner. He wore his power differently tonight, still immaculate in his tailored suit, but somehow more human. When he caught sight of her, his expression softened. He excused himself and crossed the room, stopping at a respectful distance. "You came," he said simply. "I said I would." She held his gaze. "On my terms. Always." The hint of a smile touched his lips. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." She glanced around at the watching crowd. Quite the audience. "Necessary theater," he acknowledged. "The public needs to see that justice happens in the open." A waiter offered champagne. Mara declined. Adrian accepted a glass, but didn't drink. "Kane will face charges," he said quietly, "along with Michael and Carlo. The evidence is irrefutable." "And you?" she asked. "Cooperation has its benefits." His expression revealed nothing to onlookers, but she saw the truth in his eyes. Some arrangements are being renegotiated. Translation: he was trading information for immunity, sacrificing parts of his empire to preserve what mattered. "Mrs. Vega asked about you," he continued. "She's devastated about Michael, but grateful you're safe." "I'll visit her tomorrow," Mara promised. They moved through the gallery together, maintaining a careful distance that nonetheless signaled connection. The watching crowd noted every interaction, every glance. Near a sculpture of intertwined metal, they paused. Through the glass walls, the harbor stretched before them, water reflecting the city lights. "I've been thinking about Seneca," Mara said softly, "about power and mercy, and he believed true power lies in restraint, in choosing not to use the force available to you." Adrian studied the water beyond the glass. "I made that choice on the rooftop." "You did." She turned to face him fully. "That's when I knew." "Knew what?" "That there was more to you than your reputation. That you could choose a different path." Something vulnerable flickered across his features. "The path is still being determined. But you're the one choosing it now," she said. "Not tradition or expectation." The police commissioner approached, ending their moment of privacy. More introductions, more carefully worded statements. Mara played her part perfectly. The witness whose testimony had broken open the case. The brave civilian who stood for justice. As the night progressed, she found herself on the gallery's balcony, seeking a moment of quiet. The harbor stretched before her, dark water now reflecting stars. Footsteps approached. Adrian joined her at the railing, respecting her space. "Overwhelming?" he asked. "A bit." She smiled slightly. "I preferred invisibility in some ways." "You were never truly invisible," he said quietly. "Not to me." The admission hung between them, honest and unguarded. "What happens now?" she asked. "After tonight, after the statements and cameras." Adrian looked out over the water. "My world changes, adjusts. Some operations end, others transform." He paused. "And you?" "I've given my notice at the mansion," she said. "It's time for something new." Pain flashed briefly in his eyes, quickly masked. "Of course. You deserve a fresh start. Not necessarily away from everything," she clarified. "Just on equal footing." Understanding dawned in his expression. Equal footing. No employer and employee. No protector and protected. Her eyes held his. Just two people choosing each other, if that's what you want. The careful control he maintained slipped, revealing raw emotion beneath. "It is," he said simply. "More than anything." Inside the gallery, camera flashes captured the city's elite, documenting the public face of justice. But here, in the privacy of darkness and starlight, something more important was being negotiated. "It won't be easy," he warned. "Parts of my world will always exist in shadow." "I'm not asking for easy," she replied. "Just honest, just equal." Adrian's hand moved slowly toward hers on the railing. A question, not a demand. She met him halfway, their fingers intertwining. "Equal," he agreed softly. Behind them, the gallery doors opened. The police commissioner emerged with journalists in tow. "Mr. Marchesi, Miss Quinn, a statement, please." They turned together, hands still connected. Before them stood the cameras, the questions, the public narrative being shaped. Beyond them, the harbor waters reflected light like scattered stars. Dawn approaching, a new day beginning. Adrian looked to Mara, silently asking if she was ready. She nodded once, squeezing his hand. Together they stepped into the light, neither one leading, neither one following. Equal at last. 3 months after the gallery statement, Adrian sat in his downtown office, reviewing contracts. The space had changed, more glass, fewer shadows. On his desks sat a framed photo from the Riverside Foundation. Capturing the moment, he and Mara had stepped forward together. Dominic entered without knocking, a privilege few enjoyed. "The transition is complete," he reported. "All accounts verified, all operations transparent." "Losses?" Adrian asked, signing the final document. 30% of revenue. 17 properties. 4 international connections. Acceptable. Adrian closed the folder. "And our legitimate expansions. The security firm is already profitable. Real estate development breaks ground next month. The tech investment is still pending regulatory approval." Adrian nodded, satisfaction evident. The empire hadn't fallen. It had transformed. Shed its darkest aspects, while preserving its strength. And Kreshnik, maintaining the new boundaries. Dominic's expression remained neutral. The sit-down last week was productive. He respects the new arrangement. The arrangement being Adrian's gradual shift toward legitimate business, creating space for others to fill the vacuum in certain territories. Peace through controlled transition, rather than bloody succession. "Robert Kane's sentencing is tomorrow," Dominic continued. "Will you attend?" No, Adrian's expression hardened. That chapter is closed. The betrayal still stung. The man who had been like a second father, who had taught him the business after his own father's death, had orchestrated his downfall, had used Mara as a pawn. "He's requested to see you," Dominic added. "One final conversation." Denied. Adrian stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Some bridges remained burned. He moved to the window, looking out over the city he'd once controlled through fear. Now his influence flowed through different channels: legal contracts, business partnerships, political connections brought into the light. "Miss Quinn called," Dominic said, changing the subject. "The foundation paperwork is ready for your signature." Adrian's expression softened. The Marchesi Foundation, his idea, Mara's direction. Supporting survivors of domestic violence and economic abuse, creating pathways to independence. "I'll review it tonight," he promised. After Dominic departed, Adrian checked his watch. Nearly time. He gathered his coat and headed for the elevator. Outside, autumn painted Central Park in gold and crimson. He walked its paths with newfound appreciation for simple pleasures, fresh air, changing seasons, freedom from constant vigilance. At the fountain, Mara waited, reading on a bench. No longer in a uniform, she wore jeans and a soft sweater. Her hair caught the sunlight as she looked up, smiling at his approach. "Right on time," she said as he sat beside her. "Always." He noticed her book. "Still Seneca, Marcus Aurelius today." She closed the volume, on duty and choice. They sat in comfortable silence, watching children chase leaves across the grass. So different from their first encounters. The invisible housekeeper, the untouchable boss. "Michael wrote to me," she said finally. "From prison." Adrian tensed slightly. What did he want? To apologize? She shook her head. Or to justify himself? "It's hard to tell the difference." "And your response?" "I haven't decided." Her eyes met his. Some wounds heal slowly. He understood completely. The betrayals had cut deep. Carlo, Michael, Kane. Trust, once broken, required time to rebuild. "The foundation launch is next week," she continued, changing the subject. "Are you ready for the publicity?" "As ready as I'll ever be." He smiled slightly. "Public philanthropy is still new territory." "You're adapting well." Her hand found his on the bench between them. "To all of it." By all of it, she meant everything: the legal scrutiny, the business transformation, and most of all, their evolving relationship, no longer defined by power imbalance. They were building something new, something equal. "I had good motivation," he said softly. As the afternoon light gilded the park in amber, they walked together, discussing foundation plans, her new consulting work, his business transitions. Ordinary conversations that masked extraordinary changes. Later, they would return to her apartment, not his mansion, not yet. She had insisted on maintaining her own space, her independence. He had respected her boundaries without question. Small steps, careful choices, a relationship built on consent rather than control. The city that had witnessed their beginning now watched their transformation. The whispers had changed from scandal to speculation. How far would Adrian Marchesi go in reinventing himself? How completely had power bent to love? Only they knew the truth, that some walls had fallen while others remained. That trust was daily earned, not permanently granted. That they were still learning the language of equals. But as autumn light caught the silver of her pendant, his gift, accepted on her terms, Adrian knew with certainty. Whatever survived this transformation would be stronger than what came before. Not perfect, not without shadows, but real and chosen, and theirs. Evening found them on the rooftop garden of Mara's building. String lights twinkled overhead, creating islands of warmth in the gathering darkness. Below, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the quiet revolution happening above. Adrian poured wine into 2 glasses, then settled beside Mara on the small sofa. She had created a sanctuary here. Potted plants, comfortable furniture, books stacked on small tables, a place entirely her own. To 6 months, he said, raising his glass. 6 months since the rooftop confrontation in the rain. 6 months of rebuilding, redefining, recalibrating. 6 months, she echoed, clinking her glass against his. They had developed rituals in that time. Sunday mornings in the park. Tuesday dinners, at small restaurants, where they could talk without being overheard. Quiet evenings like this one, away from public scrutiny. The foundation received another major donation, she told him. Anonymous, but substantial. Kreshnik, Adrian said with certainty. His way of acknowledging the new boundaries. Mara raised an eyebrow. Should we accept it? Your decision. You're the director. She smiled at that. He had funded the foundation, but insisted she lead it, recognizing her natural empathy and organizational skills. Another adjustment in their balance of power. I think we should, she decided. Money doesn't remember where it comes from, only where it goes. Adrian nodded, admiring her pragmatism. Speaking of decisions, there's something I want to discuss. He reached into his jacket, withdrawing a small envelope. Not a ring box, they weren't there yet, but something equally significant. What's this? She asked, accepting it. The deed to a property, on the coast, north of the city. Private, secure, with enough land that you can't see another house. Mara opened the envelope, examining the documents. You bought this? I did. He watched her carefully, as neutral ground. Not my territory, not yours. Something new, for weekends perhaps, or whenever we choose. The significance wasn't lost on her. A shared space, belonging to neither and both. A step forward without pressure. Thank you, she said softly. It's perfect. Relief crossed his features. Each offering between them carried weight, the potential for misinterpretation, for old power dynamics to resurface. They navigated carefully, always conscious of the shadows behind them. There's something else, she said, setting down her glass. I've been offered a position. Director of Operations for the Riverside Foundation. Pride shone in his eyes. You'd be excellent. Will you take it? I'm considering it. She studied him. It would mean being more public, more connected to your world, in some ways. But on your terms, he emphasized. Your achievement, your position. Yes, she smiled slightly. Though people will talk, people always talk. His hand found hers. The question is whether we listen. They had weathered the initial storm of publicity, the housekeeper and the crime boss, the scandal and testimony. Headlines had faded, replaced by occasional mentions in business sections or society pages. Their relationship, once fodder for speculation, had become old news, which suited them perfectly. Mrs. Vega asked about you, Adrian said, changing the subject. She's moving to Florida next month, to be near her sister. I'll miss her, Mara admitted. She was kind to me from the beginning. She'd like to see you before she goes. If you're comfortable with that, Mara nodded. Another bridge to cross, another wound to heal. I'd like that too. Night deepened around them, the city lights below mirroring the stars above. In this in-between space, not quite heaven, not quite earth, they had found their equilibrium. I've been thinking, Mara said quietly, about what survives transformation. And what have you concluded? That it's not about maintaining power or control. It's about finding what remains when those things are stripped away. Her eyes met his. What's left when the mansion and the money and the influence are gone? Adrian considered this. And what remains for us? Choice, she said simply. The decision to be together not because of circumstance or protection or obligation, but because we choose each other, every day. He reached out, tracing the line of her jaw with gentle fingers. I choose you, he said softly. Today and tomorrow. Even knowing it makes you vulnerable. Especially then. His smile held a trace of his old confidence. Some weaknesses are worth having. She leaned into his touch, the last barriers between them, dissolving not in passion, but in trust. This was their greatest achievement. Not the foundation, or the business transformation, or the public reckoning. But this quiet certainty between them. Who do you choose to be? She asked. The question that had lingered between them since the beginning. His answer came without hesitation. Yours, he said simply. Equal, honest, imperfect. The city continued below, lives intersecting and separating in endless patterns. But here, in this garden above the chaos, two people who had once occupied opposite ends of a power structure had found middle ground. Not a cage, not a weakness, but strength. As night embraced them, stars reflected in their wine glasses like distant possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, new choices. But tonight, in the language of trust they had carefully constructed, they spoke only of what survived, what endured, what transformed rather than broke. And in that quiet conversation, they found the answer they had both been seeking since that first question in a medical room. Who did this to you? Love had, and it had changed everything.